Hi everyone, it's Audrey and welcome back to Chapter and Converse. Today's video is going to be all the books I read in 2019 that bummed me out. So basically that is my soft way of saying these are my least favorite books of the year. And look, I'm not here to talk smack about anybody's books. As a writer who's aspiring to be published, I know what it takes to write a book and I get it. And these are books that I just did not get. They didn't work for me. And some of them I have heard great things about from other people. All things are subjective. Here comes the disclaimer. This is just my opinion. Just like my favorites video is just my opinion. I'm sure there's books on that list I know for fact that other people who I watch don't like. So it's all good. These are books that just on some level or another just did not click for me, didn't work for me. I didn't get them. There was just something that just was not quite right for me about them. So they're not all inherently bad. And I will talk a little bit about just what didn't work about them for me. And let's just not even keep doing this part of it. Let's just talk about the books. So the first book that I have to talk about is Jane Doe by Victoria Helen Stone. And I will say with a bunch of these books, I was anticipating them so much and I had such high expectations for these being amazing and they weren't, and that's part of the problem for me. And Jane Doe seemed right up my alley. It seemed like dark, messed up characters doing dark, messed up things, which I love to see and read. And it just wasn't dark enough for me, which is part of the problem. So Jane is out for revenge, and she is out to get revenge on a guy who basically wronged her best friend. And he doesn't know who she is. He has no idea what's coming. She finds a job at a company where he works, and it's basically her mission to take him down no matter what. And she does some messed up things, and nothing is kind of off the table with her, and nothing is off limits with her. And I liked elements of it, but ultimately I felt like the author played it safe and didn't go as deep and as dark as she could have gone. And I wanted more. I wanted more darkness. I wasn't interested in happy endings. I wasn't interested in redemption. I wanted this dark girl who was driven to such a level of revenge and rage to go down a path of deep, dark revenge. And I felt like she just played it too safe and that just didn't happen. And it bummed me out because I wanted it to be more screwed up than it actually was. The next book on my list is Best Friends Forever by Margot Hunt. And this was a book that was a little bit in the element of The Last Mrs. Parrish, in that you had sort of these two unlikely best friends, these two women, and something goes wrong in one of the women's lives and sort of how they're connected. And I loved The Last Mrs. Parrish, and I feel like where that book got it right and this book got it wrong is you saw the complete development of the two women becoming best friends. And in this book we have, I don't remember their names because I read this a while ago, Kat and Alice. So Kat is sort of this super wealthy, fancy, posh lady, and Alice is not. She's married, she's got the kids, she's sort of living, not quite paycheck to paycheck, but basically they are struggling to make ends meet. And the two women meet in an airport when their flights get delayed and they're flying back to Florida and develop this unlikely friendship. And Kat's husband gets murdered, or does he just fall off the balcony? Questions prevail. And Alice kind of gets pulled into the investigation, but Kat at this point is ghosting her. And this is all inside flap, first couple pages of the book type of stuff. And we sort of flash back to how the women become friends. But I didn't feel like there was enough storyline explaining how they became friends or why they became friends. So when Kat's husband dies, I don't really care. I don't care that Kat ghosted her. It makes no sense why Kat is her best friend one day and not the next. Alice is so desperate to be her friend that she just sort of comes off as pathetic. And then the story itself, it was one of these stories that was based on some coincidence, but there was inconsistencies in places. And I just didn't buy it. I didn't buy the friendship. I didn't buy any of it. So none of it made sense to me. There were no stakes to the friendship. There was no stakes to what was happening. Why would Alice even care about Kat, where it never even seemed like Kat cared about her? Whereas in The Last Mrs. Parrish, the two women who become the unlikely friends, you understand and you see the development of it. So you kind of see what's at stake with Amber, and I'm blanking on the first Mrs. Parrish's name, but if you guys read that book, you're with me. But anyway, I just wasn't invested in it. I didn't believe the friendship. I just didn't buy it. I just didn't buy it at all, which was a bummer. Because I did read Margot Hunt's next book, For Better or Worse, which I loved. And I talk about that. Don't quite know the order these videos are going up, but I do mention that in one of my favorites of the year. And she has another book coming out in 2020, which I'm super excited about. So not giving up on her as a writer, just didn't really live for this book. And I just wanted it to be so much more. I just wanted it to be so much more than it was. Another book that I wanted to be so much more than it was is What Alice Forgot by Liane Moriarty. And this is a book, I talked about this pretty extensively in the review that I did for it, which I'll link for you guys down below. But I loved Big Little Lies. I loved The Husband's Secret. And I loved elements of this book, but I felt like it was way too long, way too slow to sort of get to the point. And I love the premise of it. And this is another trope that I love. So Alice is like newly married, super happy. Like they're renovating their house. Everything is perfect. Like just literally life couldn't be better. She's just starting out and like things are really good. And then... Yes, and she's pregnant with her first child. I just wanted to check if that was actually a thing that's revealed on the back. And then next scene, she wakes up on the floor of the gym, conceivably having fallen off her spin bike. And she's kind of confused because she doesn't go to the gym and she doesn't spin. And she goes to the hospital, and it is 10 years later, and she is getting divorced, and she has 3 kids, and she has zero memory of where the last 10 years of her life went. And I love this premise, and I love this idea of like not knowing what happened and not knowing how you got to where you are and trying to piece together your life. And I loved watching Alice, like she didn't even know that she had kids, never mind that their names. She can't keep them straight. She doesn't know how to be a mom. She lives in this incredible house. It's like uber fancy. She doesn't know why her husband's divorcing her, why they hate each other, what went wrong. So seeing her try and navigate portions of this, I found incredibly funny to watch, or to read as the case may be. But I felt like the first 100 pages of this book didn't need to be there. Like there was all this stuff in the hospital that didn't need to happen. I just felt like there was some repetition at the beginning that we could have just like condensed down and got straight to the story. And I think it would have been really good. But it was too slow for me. This was a book that I wound up putting down and picking up again, maybe like a month or so later. I enjoy Liane Moriarty's writing and her storytelling, but it was a slog for me at the beginning. And then again, there were just elements of it that I didn't love. So I would have repackaged the book differently to make it totally work for me. There were parts that were funny that were total yes, but as a whole, it missed the mark for me in so many different ways. And like I said, it was just so slow, and never a good sign when I can put a book down and not think about wanting to pick it back up again. But totally into her as a writer, not giving up on her either, just all in, not a book for me, and probably one that may get moved out. So 2 ebooks that I had. The first one was an ARC, and it's called Trust Me When I Lie, and by Benjamin Stevenson. And this was a book that also, on paper, screamed, "This is for you." And I read Sadie earlier this year by Courtney Summers and talked about that in another video too. And I really enjoyed the podcast aspect of Sadie and kind of turned me on to podcasts and books, from reading Sadie and then also from starting to listen to tons of podcasts this year. And this was, I had also read I'll Be Gone in the Dark by Michelle McNamara, which is about the Golden State Killer, so a little bit of true crime element. So what this book is about is there is a guy who was convicted of a crime. Don't ask me any of the characters' names in this book because I have no idea what they are. And there is a true crime podcaster who doesn't think that this guy did it, or, or did he? And he's looking into it, and kind of some new evidence comes to light, and it can lead to, eventually leads to this guy's release from prison. And now we've got someone was murdered. Who's the killer? Have we just let the killer out of jail? There's an investigation. There's pressure on the podcaster. And this all sounded extremely interesting to me as a story that will unfold. But the story opened with like the guy getting out of jail. So it was like all the podcast stuff happened before the book started, which is a big part of what I was interested in. And the guy's out of jail. And then honestly, I was just like so confused by this book. And I wound up DNFing it halfway through. I planned on going back to it. I was not interested in picking it back up again. I struggled with the writing. I don't know if because I was reading an arc, if things changed by the time the final book came out, and that might be the case. And like I said, I was going to go back to it. They have it on Hoopla, but I just wasn't interested enough in the story. But I just found it incredibly confusing across the board. I couldn't keep track of what was going on. I couldn't quite follow the mystery. Just was so confused. And I really was interested in the podcast, which wasn't even part of the story, which I don't understand at all, because that's how it was pitched. So totally bummed out about this book. So I was excited for it. Didn't happen. It's not going to happen. I'm not going to go back to it. So yeah, this just didn't work for me at all. The next book that really bummed me out, and it bums me out on so many levels because I love this author, was Before She Knew Him by Peter Swanson. And it hurts me to do this, but I'm here to be honest. And I was honest when I did my review of the book. For the 100th time, The Kind Worth Killing is one of my favorite books, and I love Peter Swanson. And that book blew me away and made me an Insta fan of his. I am 100% looking forward to 8 Perfect Murders, which comes out in 2020, which is basically like the serial killer type person, maybe, recreating murders from famous books. Can't wait. Loved Her Every Fear. Have all the beautiful eyes sitting here on my shelf, which I can't wait for. But Her Every Fear didn't work for me on a couple different levels. And this is a book about a couple who moves to a town outside of Boston, new in the neighborhood. Hen is the wife. She's an artist. She's got some issues with anxiety and depression, and has had a history of sort of some complicated issues in her background. And her husband go to kind of like a block party, basically. And they wind up meeting the couple who lives next door, who invite them over for dinner and let's all be friends and all this great stuff. And Hen doesn't really want to go, but they go because they want to be neighborly, and like it's literally the people who live in the house next door, so it's kind of hard to dodge them. And they go over for dinner and they're doing a tour of the house because these houses are all the same, and the wife is super proud of the decorating that she's done and how she set things up. And they're doing a house tour, and while they're in the husband's office, Hen sees something that she connects to a murder that happened to a neighbor of theirs from their old neighborhood. And she thinks that this neighbor next door is a murderer. So this is the premise of the book. This is the setup. Obviously, even though I didn't like these books, I'm not going to spoil them for you. I did not like the story. I didn't like how Hen's background, her past, her mental illness were used kind of as a plot device to make her unreliable, in the sense that not only for us as the reader are we supposed to question her, but like the police and other people instantly dismiss her. And it's very much like, oh, no one's going to believe her because she has these problems, because of her mental illness, because of her past issues with depression and anxiety. So I didn't love that representation. You find out things, there's no real suspense mystery to it, because you find out the truth of what happened pretty early on. So there was no real suspense to the story. It was more sort of cat and mouse with Hen and her neighbor, but like more like mouse, I guess. Like there was no real chase. But Hen is like trying to investigate him, but there was like a whole lot of coincidence to things. She had a lot of hunches that worked out, which felt very far-fetched to me. I did not like the conclusion, the reveal, the sort of what happened with the neighbor, and all of it. Like I didn't like it. I didn't buy it. I didn't find that it was compelling. I feel like Peter Swanson can and has done much better in his stories, but it just kind of fell flat for me. So I didn't feel tense. I wasn't like, I was curious because I was like, this has to get better. And there were a few scenes and a few elements that I did enjoy, but as a whole, I did not think this was his best work. I am excited, like I said, for 8 Perfect Murders. I will continue to read anything that he puts out. This just felt a little bit too contrived and convenient for me, which is never things that I want in a thriller. And then the last book that I have to talk about, which I'm also super bummed that I just didn't get it, maybe? I don't know, is Sweet Pea by C.J. Scoose. I've heard so many great things about this, starting with it's American Psycho meets Fleabag. I love Fleabag. You guys know I have raved about this. Phoebe Waller-Bridge is my hero. She is my spirit animal. She is my everything. She, like, ladies with 3 names, like Taylor Jenkins Reid. I love it. I read part of this book. I listened to part of it on audio. I do think I enjoyed the audio more than the reading of it. But I feel like I just didn't get Rhiannon. Rhiannon. She's the girl next door, and she's a serial killer, and I love that concept, but I just couldn't get into this book. It just didn't work for me, and I feel like I'm missing out on something huge, and I feel like I just don't get it, and I feel like a moron who just doesn't get this book. But I couldn't connect with it. And it's like, I liked some of the humor to it. I liked some of the darkness to it. You know, I mean, she makes these lists of everyone she wants to kill, from like the cashier at the supermarket to people she works with. And I thought that was really funny. And I like sort of who she kills and why she kills people. But I just had a really hard time getting into this book. And it's still on my shelf because I think it's beautiful. And I am trying not to give up on it, but I read it, I finished it. I just didn't get it. And I feel so torn up inside about it because I really wanted to love this book and I really wanted to be someone who understood it. But again, I love Fleabag and I love the twistiness of American Psycho. So conceptually, I liked what this book had going for it, but I think I couldn't connect to the writing and the character, and it just didn't work for me. There is a sequel to it. I don't know, maybe if I can find it like on Hoopla or something like that, I would give it a go. But for me, I think I just need to throw in the towel and accept the fact that this was not for me. I was not for it. We are not meant to be together at any stage, but can I keep it because it's pretty? It's fat, so it takes up a lot of valuable real estate on my shelf. But let me know what you think. If I'm allowed to keep this book or not, but I think I can't. So anyway, it bums me out that I didn't love this book, but it just wasn't, just didn't hit the mark for me. So that's it for books that bum me out. Not a terrible list. Again, I read 100 books this year. To have a handful that don't work for you is not unusual. There were definitely a couple others that maybe weren't the best books I ever read in my entire life, but these are definitely books that either my expectations were in a different place or just the writing was off or something about the story was off and it just didn't work for me. So that's that. That's where we are. Let me know if you've read any of these books. If you loved them, I would love to know. If you connected with them, I would love to know about it. Again, everything is subjective. I'm not making excuses for anything here. they just were not the right ones for me. But I would love to know, again, if you guys have read any of these and what you thought of them, or what books just didn't hit the mark for you this year, kind of bummed you out, whether it was an expectation that wasn't met or a story that just didn't click. And we can chat about all that good stuff down below. So I will see you guys in the next video. Thanks for watching today. Thanks for spending some of your day with me. And I will see you guys all really soon. Bye, everybody.